Okay, so here we are back in the Lazarus game, and we're looking at adding some sounds to the game, adding something called an afraid Lazarus, and also there's one other thing that I can't remember, but we're going to do that too. I do have the book up here, and we'll take a look at it. Okay, so we talked about that. So everything in this finishing touches section we're going to go over. Every once in a while Lazarus gets trapped, and once that happens we want to change him into an afraid Lazarus, because he can't jump out. He's kind of in a pit that has 2 blocks on either side or more. He can't get out, and he's about to get squished. So we want to kind of reflect that in the way Lazarus looks. Okay, so we're gonna first create that sprite for the afraid Lazarus. So I go up here, again I right click and I say create sprite. And here we'll call this sprite. Now every once in a while, even though Lazarus gets into an afraid state, because of the way the boxes smush each other, he might be able to get out a little bit later. So he isn't completely doomed at this point, but he should be okay. So, and we're going to load that sprite. So we're looking at the afraid Lazarus. That's that one there. You do want to remove the background on that. So he's not smiling anymore. He kind of has a worried look on his face. His eyes blink. It's amazing just by making eyes blinks on characters how that kind of makes them come alive. So if you want to make a character kind of a little bit more lively, just make sure the eyes blink. Pretty straightforward. Okay, so now we have the sprite. Go back to the book. So it says to add a step event, and we're looking for a collision, something called check collision. And so we need to look at the 4 places that Lazarus can jump. It can kind of scoot over left to right, and then can jump up on top of boxes left and right. So what we're going to do is check all of them, and we're going to make sure that we see all 4 of them has a block there. Then Lazarus is kind of in trouble. So going back then. So here's the standing Lazarus. Here's our step event so far. Basically we're falling. But what we want to do as well is these 4 check collision events. So let's check that. Let's move to contact. I think it would be under control. Yeah, right here. Check collision. And we'll have a series of 4 of these. We want to look to the right. Remember, right is 40. We want to make it relative. And we'll say only solid. And then we create 3 more. We want to look right and up. So right is 40. Up is negative 40. Remember, y is upside down. Make that relative. Here, x is negative 40. We're just looking to the left. This would be 0 relative. And the last one is up and to the left. So that would be negative 40, negative 40 relative. If all those 4 things are true, then we want to change Lazarus into an afraid, the sprite from just a regular Lazarus to an afraid Lazarus. So let's do that. Notice we're not changing objects here, we're just changing sprites. So this one here. And we'll leave the speed at 1. Okay, so there are situations where even though Lazarus is kind of trapped, he can get out if certain boxes come down and smash things. So we look at the step event for the standing Lazarus, and we change the sprite. So now we're in the step event. Yeah, that's where we're located. So I think what they wanted us to do is this. We'll do another change sprite at the beginning, and we'll change them into a standing Lazarus. Not sure why this works, but we can try it and see. Let's try it. Getting there. Notice how he's afraid for just a second? All I'm getting is stone boxes. See how he's afraid right now? Now he gets squished, okay? So that's kind of the behavior you want. Every once in a while, he gets out of his predicament. See if I can get that set up. Darn it. Okay, so I'm kind of in a mess right now. I'm going to get squished again. Try one more time to recreate the problem. Okay, so now he's afraid, but then he's happy again. See that? Okay, so you can see him go through that transition. Okay, so that's how to add the afraid Lazarus, and all we did really was made a sprite here, and then we went into object last stand, and we added to the step event. The start we changed it to object last stand, so we're going to assume it's standing, and then if it's on the ground, then we fall, or if it's not on the ground, then we fall, and then we have a series of 4 collisions, check collisions, and each one's looking at the 4 different block locations, and if all 4 are filled, then it changes the sprite to object Laz afraid. If this continues on the next frame, he just continues to stay there. This happens so fast that you're not going to see it. But this seems to handle the problem with Lazarus not being afraid. Okay, so we need to add a goal now. And there's a lot that goes on here. So first we need to create the button. So let's try that. So we have a new object, so we start with the sprite. And we're going to call it button. And this is the button Lazarus presses to stop the conveyor belt and move on to the next level. So that's the goal of this game, is to be able to press this button. Let's load the sprite for it. Here's the stop button. Don't say remove background, uncheck that. All right, so we have our stop button. Let's create the object as well. And we'll use the button sprite. Add a collision event between the button and object last stand. Oh, wrong one. And the first thing we want to do is sleep for a little while. It's nice, before you just jump to the next room, it's nice to just pause for a second so the person realizes that they've completed the level and then move on to the next room. So we want to wait for maybe just 1 second. And that's this one here. And this is in milliseconds, and so you have to ask yourself the question, how many milliseconds are there in a second? Is it 1,000,000? No, it's 1,000. So a millisecond actually means 1,000. So 1,000 milliseconds means a second, and so we want to wait a second, so we don't need to change anything here. Make sure to leave redraw set to true. And then we do our standard logic for making sure there is a next level. Let's do that. First we check to see if there's a next room. If there is, we go to the next room. And you can choose a transition effect, doesn't matter which one. Then there's an else clause. So that, I guess, would be here. And in the case where we pull out a started block. In the case where there isn't a next room, we want to put up a little message to say they beat the game. So here it is. Okay. And then they'll need to respond to that message by just hitting the OK button. And then you want to take them to the first room to restart the game if they want to play it again. Here it says different room. That's what we want to do. And we want to go to the first room in our list. This is room 0. We only have one in here. And then just choose a transition. And then anytime you have an open block, you have to put a closed block there. What's interesting here is we want to do two things in the otherwise section. So we check to see if there's a room or there's a next room. If there isn't, then we jump down here. We skip over this one and jump down here. But since we want to do two things instead of one, we have to put start a block and end a block around it because we want these two to be controlled by this else block. So in the case this isn't true, well, we know we're on the last room. So we want to jump down here and we want to do two things. Display the message and then go on to the first room. So let me see if I can do that. That's all happening in the button. So if I go into the room and now I add a button, and usually you can put buttons on either side for at least some of the games, right? And let's see if our logic works out. Okay, so I'm just trying to get out of the gotta fix my sprites. Okay, now I can get out. Okay. Goes on to the next room. There isn't a next room because I only have one room. So it says congratulations and I restart the first room. Okay. Let me see if I can figure out what's going on with my left thing. I centered it properly. At least I thought I did. Yeah. So let me just check this. I guess it's right that's messed up. Well, maybe it's left. Yeah, so this, see how it wasn't centered? Again, we want the origin to be just above his left ear. Now it should work correctly. All right. So we've completed what happens when they touch the button process, but now we need to add sounds to our game. Now there are two types of sounds that you can add to a game. The first one is one like the background music, and you want this to loop over and over again instead of just playing once. So let's create that sound. Because there's two parts to creating a sound. You have to actually create the sound, and then you have to use the sound. Kind of like sprites. You create the sprite, and then you use the sprite. So this is the first time we've added sound to any of our games, perhaps. So we say create sound, and we'll shorten the name a bit, say music, let's say. I'm going to go out to our resources and see if we can find our music sounds. Here it is. Now you have a choice between a MIDI file and an MP3 file. I tend to choose the MIDI file because they're so much smaller. Let me see if I can pull this over so you can see the size. Same music. Here it's 4 megabyte, and this is only 23 kilobyte. So it takes a long time at the beginning of the game to load the music if you do it as an MP3. You get better sound quality, because what this is just a recording of the music. What this is a MIDI file, which is, it tells you which note to play. It's like a synthesizer file. It tells you which note to play, when, for how long, how loud, which instrument. And that's really easy to do. So basically it's just a program for our synthesizer. Now in fact, almost all sound cards have a built-in synthesizer. So if you're a musician and you say, I want to get a synthesizer, the answer is, hey, you already have one. It's inside your computer. All you have to do is use it. So at home I have a little keyboard controller, and I use that to play the synthesizer that's on the sound card. And they're about $100. They don't make any sounds themselves, but you connect it to your computer, and you can play songs, multiple instruments at the same time. Okay? So I'm going to choose this one, the Midi Sequence, because it's a lot smaller. It doesn't take so long to load. And when you're constantly trying to run your game, every time you start it, it has to load that MP3 file. So I would stay away from the MP3 files if you can, at least during the development. Maybe after you release your game, you want to get the higher quality, that's fine. Okay. So here's our sound. We can listen to it. It's kind of a creepy sound, but we're going to make it background music. And there's lots of other sounds we need to create in the game, so let's create those now. The next one is the button sound that occurs when the button is pressed. Okay, let me turn on my speaker so we can actually hear this. Yeah, thanks. Okay, so you can just press the go button. It's really annoying because it keeps repeating. Okay, so that's our sound. That gets annoying quick. And then when do we want that sound to be played? Well, in the collision event with the button and object last. So and we haven't used this one either. This is a new action, play sound. And we'll do that first. And we'll choose our button and set loop equal to false. We only want it to occur once. We don't want it to occur over and over again. It's not background music, so leave that unselected. So let's add some more sounds then. Here's the crush sound that you want to use when one of the boxes crushes another box. So let's do that. Oops. So there's our sound there. And where do we put that is the question. I would put it in the following ones. Anytime you crush something, so anytime you see a destroy instance, make sure to play the crush sound as well. Okay. So you have to go through all of your falling boxes and set the sound so that when it destroys a box, you wouldn't put it here because you're just stopping. But here, since you're going to destroy the cardboard box, you want to play the crush sound. See what other sounds we need to create. Here's the move sound. I'm not sure what that's for. Let's listen to it and see. Oh, yeah. That's a little annoying boingy sound, okay? So we'll call this one move. And when should this occur? Any of these movement keys. So I would say just do it right here so it happens either way. Now let's see. I guess we have to do it this way. This is a little bit more complicated. I would drag a start and end block right around this change instance idea. So if this is true, since we want to do two things, we had to drag out these start and end blocks. We drag this out here. and the sound we play is the move sound. So that's if we're just jumping to the left or sliding to the left. Here's jumping to the left. We want to do the same thing. So again, we have to, since we want to do two things controlled by the test. And here too, we want to play the jump sound. Okay, so this changes a little bit. You want to do the same thing on the right side too. So let's just try that and try these changes to see if we get the sounds we want. I don't hear my jumping sound. I didn't do right. Here's left. Okay, that seems to work. Okay, we also want to test if our stop button works. Notice we didn't hear the background music. So let's see what the book recommends about the background music. So we go to the controller. Now the reason we do that is the controller, again, does a lot of things that span the whole game. In this case, we want to, when the controller is created and you're at the start of the game, you want to start playing the background music. But you don't want the background music to restart on every room. You want it just only at game start. That's when you want to change the background music. So there's a special event called game start. And then here, this is where we say start playing the background music. And then this time, this is the only time we want to actually loop it. So here's our background music, and we want to set loop to true. So when you get to the end of the music, you're still playing the game. You want the music to start over again. All right, so we want to complete our sound list here. We've done our music. We have the squish sound and the wall sound. Let's listen to the squish sound. Not very flattering. Okay, I would have chosen a different sound. So we go to Lazarus squished. And we're going to add this sound. I suppose we could do it here. We'll see if that works for us. Never find play sound. So we'll do this first. And we're going to do the squish sound. I didn't really name it that well. So anytime you go in and rename something in GameMaker, it goes through and it changes the name of everyone else. Okay, so let's try it now. See if we get that sound. The last sound is when falling objects hits the wall. What should happen? We'll do that next. We'll just let Lazarus get squished here. Hear our music? Our music's playing. Now it's starting to sound like a game. Okay. So the timing on that sound wasn't very accurate. So when to play the squish sound? Maybe it would be better. So we put in Lazarus squished. So we'll delete it from here, and we'll, in the falling objects, like falling stone, if we hit Lazarus, we'll play the squish sound there. Okay. So add that sound to the falling boxes when they hit Lazarus. You have to go through each box and set that up. For the stone box, it's done, but for all the other falling boxes, you need to add this sound. The final sound is the wall sound. And I can't remember what this sounds like, so we can test it out here. Okay, so it's just a big clunk when any of the boxes hits a wall. So we'll use that. And then we'll add that sound to the collision event with wall. So here's falling stone again. Here's collision event with wall. And again, here we want to play the sound, the wall sound. So that's when it hits the floor. Probably do that first. So anytime you hit a wall with one of the falling boxes, make sure to play the wall sound. So I think all our sounds are hitched up now. Let's try it and see. You want to put your cheats in the game. Remember, N is for the next room, P is for the current or previous room. We'll do those two. Okay? So there's one other thing up here. We did the background already. Oh yeah, the start of level. What we want to do here is put the word Lazarus, kind of a splash screen that says Lazarus at the start of each level. And what we're going to do is, it'll be on the screen for about a second, and then it will change itself into a controller. So then the game can start. So we first need to create that sprite. So we're just going to show this at the beginning of the game, not at the beginning of every level. That seems like overkill. So let's create that sprite. And this is the, I guess, the title. And let's load up that title. Here's the title. It's kind of a nice splash screen. And a splash screen is just one that comes up while your program is loading. Basically, kind of identifies it. You do want to remove the background on that. So there's our sprite. It's really big compared to all the other sprites. But we want to put that into our room here. And instead of a controller, we're going to get rid of the controller. And instead, we're going to add our splash screen. But you have to create the object first. And we'll choose the title sprite. What we want to do after the game starts is, let's see what the book recommends time-wise. It says 2 seconds, okay? And then we change into a controller. So, so here's the create event. And we're going to sleep for 2 seconds, so that's 2,000 milliseconds. And I think we don't need to redraw it. And then at the end of those 2 seconds, we'll change ourselves into a controller. Okay? All the other rooms will just have a controller in them, but this room will have the title screen. So this will only be used on the first screen of the game, or in the first room for the game. So we're going to change it into a controller. And this will only happen in the first room. Now we go to our first room then, and we're going to add our title sprite, or title object. So click and drag, you figure out where you want it. Might be nicer up here so you don't get in the way of the actual pit. That's not always going to work, but if yours is as short as mine, that's pretty good. So let's try it and see. So the expected behavior is we see the Lazarus title screen for 2 seconds. It disappears and then the game starts. Let's try it. That did not work. Oh, here we go. I didn't see anything though, did you? Okay, so I'm going to pause the recording here. I'm going to try to figure this out. Once I'm done with this, then, well, let's just go on to the next topic. And that is just level design. This is really quick. And then you can be working on that while I'm trying to troubleshoot. Okay, so how do you make more difficult levels? Just a couple ideas. This game isn't too complicated. So I'm going to duplicate this room. I'm going to replace that with controller. So on subsequent rooms, just put a controller in somewhere. Here's different ideas for the game. If you want to make the game more difficult, you make your walls taller. So I'm going to put in some walls. So you could do this. Another way to make it more difficult is make it skinnier as well, so they have less room to work with. I don't know, I like symmetry, but it looks kind of boring. So a room like this would be harder than the previous room. I'm putting the buttons here. Okay. So that makes it a little tougher. Another way you can make it tougher is move the button, actually just hang it in the air. So you can just put a button there. Now the boxes should probably, well, I don't know if I want that. The question is, when a box hits the stop button, what do you want it to do? Do you want it to stack up on top of the stop button, or do you want it to blast through the stop button and ignore it? I think we just ignore it. I think that would be better. So you do that. Another thing you might do is create you could create some overhangs. So go back to the wall sprite. Now obviously boxes are going to accumulate up here on top. But it's like a little shelter for Lazarus until he gets out here to actually build things. And then you can make it kind of a platform game too. You could put platforms in different spots. Kind of like rest stops for Lazarus. Make sure it's playable though. So try to be creative on your levels. I'm only going to assign 5 levels on this because there's really not a lot here going on. You have boxes, you have a button, and they're always on every level. So the main thing on level design is make sure it's increasing in difficulty instead of decreasing. If you put your hardest level first, that doesn't give time for the user to learn how to play it. So make sure that you give the user kind of a nice ramp up on complexity. The last level is where you can make it kind of tough. Okay? But try to be creative with level design. And I think now we've covered everything. Didn't think we needed to redraw it since it was static, but evidently we need to do that. So on the title, where it says redraw, make sure to set that to true. And that way we'll actually see it. There it goes. Okay.